Hey, everybody, welcome to Inside the Matrix. I hope that all of you are doing well in spite of yet another week of the masquerade, the Rona madness. Anyway, today my special guest is Laura Eisenhower. Of course, we all know her as the great granddaughter of President Eisenhower. She's also an astrologer, a psychic intuitive, and also a thought leader in the truth movement, and somebody that's highly respected everywhere that she goes. And Laura, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here, Jimmy.
And before we get going here, if you wouldn't mind, most everybody, I'm sure, in our listening audience and our viewing audience knows who you are. But for the few people who don't, can you kind of give us a little bit of background and where you came from and kind of how you got to where you are now?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's always a great question. Gosh. Well, like you said, I'm a great granddaughter of President Eisenhower, and it's just been a lifelong mission, man, on a soul level. But, when it comes down to research connected to, anything related to Eisenhower, I've been working hard to reveal exopolitical information about his administration that has been largely held in secrecy, relating to, his warning about the military industrial complex and, deeper truths that we don't hear about in our history books or in, how media gives us insights into what's really been happening in the world and what people like him were really, a part of or connected to. I just seek to bring, light to it. There's talk about ET government treaties, and some of this more sort of, I guess, fringe alternative kind of information that one would like more find at a UFO event or in websites or channels that others might deem to be conspiracy, theories. So that was a big part of my journey to understand what took place during his administration that we don't hear about. And yeah, so I felt a calling regarding my mission since I was a child. And my background is wilderness education, wilderness expedition leadership. And I just worked a lot at developing my clairvoyant skills and abilities, studied astrology. But one of my favorite topics is understanding what our junk DNA is really made of and what it, really represents, and shedding a lot of light on our true human potential. And yeah, exposing, dark hidden agendas connected to negative ET agendas, dark technology,
Mm-hmm.
And how that's affected us and how that relates to the planetary grid network and manipulations of the planetary grid network, and also our galactic history. So I went through a lot of things on a personal level that kind of threw me into opportunities to explore the dark night of the soul and overcoming, trauma and being targeted. And in all of that, going down lots of rabbit holes to connect dots as best as I can. So I
Oh,
put
yeah, we've
together a
all
lot
been
of
there.
presentations. Yeah, so I put together a lot of presentations, and I've had the opportunity to travel the world for the last 10 years. Now it's a little bit different because of, kind of what's going on in the world. But yeah, my focus has been on, Gaia Sophia, the planetary consciousness, Earth grids, global alchemy, DNA, and ET races. And my goal and passion is to inspire unity consciousness and bring us back to 0 point unified field, understanding also this ascension window period and, what's available for us in the here and now, so that we can overcome a lot of these dark tactics that are seeking to enslave us on a whole other level than we already have been, if you know what I mean, New
Oh,
World Order agenda.
absolutely. We're seeing it big time. They really amped it up last year. But let's go back to 2012, because I know a lot of us were thinking about the end of the Mayan calendar, ascension, all these awesome things going to happen. And, December 21st, 2012, it was, and honestly, I thought it was going to be a big deal. And I think a lot of other people did too. And the time came and went, and we went, hmm, okay, that wasn't it. Uh, what were your thoughts back then? Because I know you were in the, you've been doing these shows and presentations for a long time.
Well, I mean, sometimes when things aren't uneventful, it's good news versus false ascension programs and Armageddon programs that would create something on a bigger deal level that might not be authentically true to what ascension really represents. So what the 2012 peak time that I've kind of come to terms with and have begun to like really understand has a lot to do with the Venus transits and the fact that in 2010 the sun began to move through the 13th sign of Fiacus. So a lot actually has been happening as far as the shifts in the planetary grid network. Lots of grid workers and starseed missions have been working really hard to correct a lot of the reversals and a lot of the things that have been put in place, like dark technologies, one being the Nephilim reversal grid, the Niberian dyadic crystal manipulations that have placed themselves through these negative ET agendas. I more would use the term alien because it connects with AI and archon. So it has that artificial component, which to me relates more to the word alien than ET, because our higher DNA and the dormant strands of DNA that we're looking to activate do connect us genetically with higher benevolent, groups. So when I look at, the more nefarious, malevolent types, it very much is trying to hold us in the 3D through these enslavement agendas that are targeting our ego and our minds to throw us into these more negative, constructs so that, we are enablers of artificial timelines. So 2012, we're dealing with the Gregorian calendar. We're not like really functioning in the true calendar system. So I think, around the time of 2012, it wasn't really that peak date that everybody, thought it would be to see, real things begin to happen. Is that something coming up? Well, it's always a potential, but, we're in a stellar activation cycle and it basically really began in 2000. To me, the peak was 2010 when the sun started to move through the 13th sign of Fiacus. And the thing is, what that represents is the element ether and the 13th gate connecting to the mother arc energy and the return of the mother arc energy to the planetary consciousness. For the last 26,000 year cycle, it hasn't really been available. As of 5,500 years ago, the mother arc energy was not grounded in the physical planet. So we've had a lot of dark cycles in history. So 2012 has been more about an awakening. So we're not necessarily going to see something huge happen on the outside, but we might experience more something profound on the inside, like realizing all the different mechanisms that they've used to keep us from our true authentic self. And so when the sun started to move through the 13th sign of Fiacus and it began to help us to access the ether energy, we began to be able to integrate the light codes more efficiently and also ground ourselves to the physical planet on a greater level. So people have gotten downloads and epiphanies and realizations that, wow, okay, this is what we need to do. And what is it we need to do? Well, we're restoring the Tree of Life template and correcting through our own inner work and awakening a false artificial Tree of Life overlay, which has been 10 spheres versus like instead of 12, that has been overlaid on the planetary grid networks that have made it very, very difficult for us to awaken. So when this shift began to take place, things really began to open up. And then you see the rise of like the patriots. You see a new administration coming in that isn't like what we've seen because, a lot of people know both the right and left are corrupted and both are owned. So something a little bit, kind of different has happened. And I'm not saying like, oh, that administration is, totally a representation of some aspect of the greater awakening, but to a certain degree it has been because people have been really able to see and begin to understand the greater crimes against humanity. Topics like human trafficking, child trafficking, pedophilia has come way more to the surface. So nothing really profound happened except for seeing that dark side of humanity, seeing the underbelly of the beast, seeing things that maybe we don't want to see. But that is almost like a prerequisite for us to really begin to experience what ascension really is. It's like we can't really heal unless we do shadow work. We can't overcome illness unless we understand the root of disease. So we are facing a dark night of the soul right now on the planet in order to understand the things that are trying to keep us from our birthright and what this planetary body is encoded to bring to us. So to me, it's a time of sorting out information and connecting to the truth frequency so that we can greater discern misinformation, disinformation versus like real facts and real truth that we can begin to work with so that we can make wiser choices when it comes to how we function in society. So that's, sort of the more physical level, but then we got the greater soul work, as sovereign beings. What are we going through in our own personal lives? What do we need to deal with in our own personal world in order to be able to step up to the plate to connect with this organic ascension timeline versus these artificial timelines that things like Project Looking Glass are connected with? So yeah, nothing really profound happened, but something did get ignited. And that started, kind of a while back. But it's not like an overnight thing, and it's not going to, be like this one, big event necessarily. It could have been, but it seems to be much more long and drawn out, based in a lot of people and their agreements to participating very closely with the most unconscious of humanity. So an awakened person is going to experience a completely different reality unless they're willing to sort of act as a cosmic medic or, a researcher that's going to be a resource to expose truth. It puts one in a vulnerability to trolls and targeting and attack. So one's not just going to levitate out of here and just all of a sudden ascend if they have like a major agreement to help, awaken those that might otherwise not be able to pick up on these downloads and connect with the organic ascension signals, that are struggling more with the AI signals. Maybe they haven't lived a healthy lifestyle or have been immersed in television, magazines, propaganda, steered narratives, everything connected to the sort of Project Mockingbird falsities that we still see that are really, digressing a lot of people, but also awakening many people. So I feel like what we're not seeing as a profound breakthrough are those that are on a timeline where they're participating in, kind of helping the lowest common denominator. I sort of metaphorically look at it like an expedition leader holding the hand of the slowest hiker. You're going to have to drop your vibration a little bit, or, have to withstand the tumultuousness and hardships of trying to get other people on board. But there's going to be a certain point where enough is enough, and people are going to like really maybe separate themselves more from interacting with people in this matrix sort of way. Because I know a lot of starseeds or, researchers or people that one would consider awakened, feel incredible stress. They're tired of being targeted. They're, exhausted trying to wake people up. And once they can let go of maybe that mission, when they feel the time is right, without feeling they're abandoning their mission, I feel like they're going to accelerate greatly and really begin to feel into, what has been available, but not fully felt or experienced on a collective level as like a major event, right? And people talk about like this great event. Cobra talks about the event. Other, people have been talking about it for a long time.
Sure.
And that like some big event's going to happen, and we're just going to like wake up and everything's going to be different and better. To me, it's a much more long and drawn out process if one is committed to helping to bring an end to things like child trafficking, pedophilia, and all this kind of stuff, and to experience the greater timeline, one would really, need to almost get off the grid and be willing to get off social media. Because right now, a lot of people are still interfacing with the false system, for, good reasons, but it makes it very hard for them to experience what might naturally come. It's sort of like if somebody's coming in to save a person from a house that's burning to the ground, they might inhale a lot of smoke. They might, get burnt. And some might not even make it, because there's a lot of people here on rescue missions. And so those rescue missions make it seem like we're not really heading anywhere, because we're sort of, I kind of use the term cosmic medic. But those that might have been like, okay, I feel like I've completed my contract, I'm going to go off the grid or go off into a cave or go onto the mothership. Maybe, a good portion of the population is experiencing that more profound feeling of, wow, this is what the Mayans predicted. So to me, what the Mayans predicted was the Great Awakening, and the sabotage is like the Great Reset and New World Order. So I just feel like a lot of people we're experiencing this crossroads, and a lot of people are sort of experiencing both timelines. And there's going to become a point where it's like, we can't be on this with you anymore if you're in this much refusal. And then I see a bifurcation and kind of a bridging, more like assisting from afar, sort of going back into maybe a spirit guide zone, or just hoping that people will get a clue, and eventually they will. But there is that threat of people absolutely digressing through getting the jab, with the 5G and all the manipulations that we experience through the news and media, chemtrails, everything.
Everything.
They definitely do run the risk of being more genetically modified and missing out on this grand opportunity. And I just feel like people with strong missions, I'm not saying that they're giving up on those people, but I mean, there's only so much a person can do, because a true starseed mission, or whatever the label is, does not want to control a person and make them follow something. It's all about helping them to be sovereign and see a much larger picture. And some souls are incredibly stubborn and really aren't willing to do that. And we're seeing more people find a boundary to those types. It's like, and I don't want to say that they're giving up, or I am, when I have to create a boundary or delete somebody or avoid a family member who just brings me down and drops my vibration. But there's a point in which, people are making a choice, and those choices are going to stick. And it's not going to be so much about processing and going through, a healing, experience. It's literally like major choices are being made. We've been going through a transformation cycle, especially as of January 2019, with the Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter conjunction. And Pluto represents death, rebirth, alchemy, and transformation. It takes us into the dark night of the soul. So we've been experiencing it as a humanity. So if a person really, really chooses the fear of death and giving their power away in the face of the outer sort of matrix authority figures,
which is what we're seeing
finding
now,
what this all means,
yeah.
And they still hold on to it after a certain point, they're not going to be easily helped. And that's at the point where the fireman needs to leave the house in order to preserve and protect itself from going down with a sinking ship. You know what I mean? And so
Yes.
I feel like that's what we're in for in the next couple months, is more of the bifurcation than anything else. And I don't know how that's going to look. I mean, but I also see a lot of people being activated to take on more of a role, maybe in the political realms that might be non-political, but might be just representing what this country was, founded on, to help, bring back the spirit of this nation. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So everybody's kind of different. Not
Yeah.
everybody's going to be experiencing these timelines in the same way.
That's so true. And your point is well made about the inner changes that have been occurring. And I've said this many times in the show. Back in the 90s, I started my red pill events back around 1990. So if you would ask me mid 90s or late 90s, is there any hope for humanity whatsoever to be, to free itself from the slave system that we're in? I would have said, absolutely not. It's completely hopeless, because at that time we didn't have the internet really. The programming was so heavy. Everything was hidden, incredibly hidden, unless you really dug for it. And found the right books and a few publications. you really had a hard time finding out what was really going on. But there's big changes that occurred in the last 10 years or so, or 8 years. I don't know exactly where you could draw that line because it's pretty gradual. But I'm very encouraged now because I see a huge awakening. And of course, last year when the powers that shouldn't be decided to really amp it up. And I don't know if it's out of desperation because too many people are waking up, or they just felt like they had enough minions in place to do it, but they really amped up the whole control system. And this was not just in the United States, this was worldwide. It was a coordinated effort. And of course, we know the lockdown plan of the Rockefeller Foundation back in 2010 was part of what was being followed in Event 201 in 2019, which actually they gamed the exact scenario and went through the exact scenario of bringing out this Novid event that they did last year. So for whatever reason, they decided to really amp it up. And what I see and what you also have said is that now we're collectively being forced to go through the dark night of the soul, to look at all of the stuff that's being revealed. I mean, everything's coming out. Nothing's being hidden anymore. We know the most evil things that are taking place in and amongst the political elite, the corporate elite, or what, I hate using that word elite because they're, it almost makes them sound good, but
Right.
they're absolutely not. And, but it's all coming out. And this is a very good thing. I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's many different levels to the awakening process, getting in touch with the hidden history that has been, largely rewritten, our galactic history. And then, the real crimes against humanity and, all the different, programmings and false flags and psychological operation events that, have impacted people, either in a way where they're programmed by it or they're just absolutely traumatized. So, a person that has good intent that might go off to a war thinking that they're fighting for something noble. I mean, that's really tough to awaken to the fact that, whoa, okay, there's this hidden shadow government and deep state cabal that which basically is running both sides of war to conquer and divide us. And
Yeah.
there's many wars, so I'm not going to be any, too specific about which ones I'm talking about. But
Or the last 20 years, we've seen
yeah,
plenty.
yeah, and these greater galactic wars have stepped down into the human sphere and are using more like psychological operations and false flag tactics to control a soul into complying or agreeing to something based in their best intent, because they believe that they're doing it for reasons that might not actually exist. And so
And
I
there,
feel the integrity of that individual stands the test of time, even if they were duped and played, because I just feel a major attack on really well-intentioned people. And some people are just, blackmailed or they go for the, I'll sell out, for the sake of a lot of money. So we're dealing with a diverse humanity that is responding and reacting to this greater history, and much that has been hidden from us and much that has been revealed enough in order to recruit people into going against true spiritual integrity, like I said, and doing the
absolutely.
right thing. Because really, I feel like we're here for soul and spiritual development, and the trappings of fame and wealth has been one aspect, but then, hidden operations, MK Ultra, Monarch programming, secret
Yep.
space programs, kids being abducted in my labs. We need to understand that in order to be able to really push the greater humanity forward. And if that is not possible, we're not at the mercy of their inability to awaken, I feel, and we will still experience something incredible.
I agree. And I think the military and the police, this is a huge test for them because they have been so used and abused. And I think a lot of them have realized that, and that's why we see these massive amounts of suicides that have occurred tragically over the last 15 years or so. It's just unconscionable what was done to these people and what they were forced to endure under false pretenses. And I have all the compassion in the world for them. And, I think at this time, a lot of people are talking about the military stepping up and upholding our Constitution and helping us get out of this quagmire that we're in with the deep state, the dark cabal, whatever you want to call them, these evil people, these people that are demon encrusted. I don't know, how else you describe them, because they're so insidious in the way that they operate and the way that they live. I'm not even sure that they're actually human.
No, I don't feel that. I feel like it's a robot race. Even Fauci in a video recently, it looks like he literally has a full-on face mask where when he's talking, it's like part of his skin is flapping. And it's like, I bet if we like focused in, we'd see like wires or robotics. Seriously.
Pull off the mask. Yeah. And I don't know if you've seen it. There's some pictures going around about the current non-resident in the White House with a little thing in the back that looks awful lot like a mask. That, whoever that is, I seriously doubt that was the politician that we saw, 5-10 years ago. I think that there's something really nefarious going on there. What the heck it is, clone, double, professional mask on somebody, I don't know, but it's just absolutely a joke. And you see this guy doddering around, barely making it up to, he can't do a press conference. He can't intelligently answer any questions. He has to, and he just gets befuddled so easily. It's absolutely just mind-boggling. And I think even some people that are on the left, and I hate to say left and right, Republican, Democrat, because really we're talking about good versus evil as far as, or freedom versus slavery. Those are the real issues here. And I think a lot more people are beginning to see, hey, there's something really not right here.
I know. I mean, I've always avoided the political world. I couldn't pass a government citizenship test to save my life. I don't have that kind of mindset to understand the structure of government. And people are like, aren't you related to Eisenhower? Like, how are you like not able to speak this language or function in this way? And I've avoided it. I kind of went straight for, okay, hidden operations, what are these 3-letter organizations? What are they really about? What went on with the ET government treaties? What is the truth of that? I was much more curious about that stuff because it's like, we're dealing with a socially engineering society. It seeks to socially engineer. And we see how they're targeting, school systems and children with the indoctrination programs to create, some of the things that we see in movies, like Hunger Games type scenarios, or like V Vendetta, using a virus to control humanity. So we see these, kind of sort of things. So it's very surreal to be living it, because most people are like, but that's just a movie. No, there's no way that that's really happening. And the absurdity is getting to a point where people are really starting to realize, like, this actually is, taking place. And I've avoided, right and left and this and that. I do feel like there's factions to the military and secret space programs, some aligned with the benevolent forces and groups and some that aren't. So our job as humans is to get to know ourselves so well that we're in such a high vibration of truth within ourselves, because we're being authentic. It doesn't mean we have to be perfectly enlightened and not get angry or sad, because I think it's impossible to not react in that way.
Right.
So we're seeing the abuse of innocence and the exploitation and abuse of Mother Earth. To not react, I think that's very healthy. But there's a big thing going on that is opening people's eyes, and turning a blind eye isn't going to work.
Oh, absolutely.
And I know I kind of lost my train of thought, but
well, I wanted to ask you before we get there's so many roads we can go down here, but I wanted to ask you to touch on galactic history a little bit, because a lot of people talk about different factions that are controlling different regions. Like some people say that there's a ET group that's controlling the Chinese, an ET group that's controlling the Israelis, another one that's involved with the U.S., and another one involved with the England, and all tied in with royal families and all this kind of stuff. I just wanted to get your take on that.
Yeah, well, that's very true. And certain stargates have been targeted, and there are different groups involved. You got the fallen angelics manifested through the Anunnaki, different factions of the Anunnaki, alliances that were formed between these groups with the Draco reptilians. So you got the Sons of Belial and the Black Suns, which are the two main controller groups on the planet. The gateways on the Earth that the Sons of Belial occupy is the 11th Stargate, and that actually is in England. And then the Draco reptilian manipulation is the 8th and 9th Stargate, which is actually China, Tibet. So there's certain locations on the planet, or Draco reptilian connected to the Black Suns. So there's certain locations on the planet where they will make a point to occupy. Same with like Giza Pyramid and places in Egypt, and even, the 13th gate, which is Uluru in Australia. And we see like Australia being one of, the continents and countries that are showing the extremity of the New World Order agenda, particularly Victoria. And then other places are okay. So, after Second World War and just the whole Nazi kind of thing and how that connects with the deep state, and also Zionism, disguised in these movements, moving to these particular regions in secrecy. So like Project Paperclip, a similar thing happened in Australia, where, the government infiltration, also in religions, the infiltration of these, darker forces, and also these secret societies that used to be more benevolent, like the Templars and the Masons. And the medical industry. It's literally like a cancer and a virus that has taken like such a huge hold. And so the bathtub is draining and it's really annoying. Anyway, so some of these have been sort of dark agendas that were at a time almost at war with each other, wanting to be the more dominant group that would, be in charge of a particular artificial timeline or enslaving the human race. And then they realize, well, if they're all awakening and we're warring amongst each other, it'll be better if we form alliances. So some of that happened over the course of time. And then you got, the Emerald Covenant, you have the Paladorian, Covenant, which basically is a rescue mission connected with lots of star seeds and groups that have not been able to incarnate on, the planetary surface for a while, like the Aquafarians and beings from Andromeda. And how some have been recruited and pulled in, Nordics have played somewhat of a not so benevolent role as far as humans are concerned. And a lot of ET races and subterranean cultures, underground cities, don't like what they see as far as what's happened to humans. But the more, but they're learning too, because we're all connected. So I know I'm all over the place right now, and I apologize to everybody.
No, that's great.
But it's sort of like, it's like this mafia group, and it's not as racist as it appears, as far as like, and then this is why they're using race wars in order to divert our attention away from, what they're trying to do with genetics, creating like superhumans, super soldiers, and all the genocides and Holocaust to wipe out certain races, because basically 7 root races and 5 cloister races were manifested when we dropped into this lower density due to all these galactic wards and exploding planets. And I go into great detail in my presentations. When we dropped down into this lower density, this Earth was seeded with a 13-dimensional monadic core, which connects us with 0-point unified energy. And so the planetary grid network was very supportive of us sort of recovering from these previous galactic wars and these, human seedings that were sort of experimentational in higher Earth energies and harmonic universes like Tara, where Tiamat was. So Tiamat exploded. We drop into this lower density for all these kind of reasons, hybridization and manipulation of incarnate consciousness. We drop into this lower density, then we get, 7 root races. We got the Aryans, the Atlanteans, the Lumerians, there's the electrical wars and all this stuff we're never get in like, our schooling. And
Oh
then
no.
all of a sudden, this invasion coming in from like the Anunnaki to like infect that Atlantean advanced culture as a refugee race because of these exploded planets. And then we got the explosion of Maldek. So what that really represents is when a planetary body explodes, because we're connected to the consciousness of that planet and the planetary grid network of that planet, we experience that trauma and fragmentation. So the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, there's a 3D one, which is Maldek, and a 5D one, which is Tiamat. That is a representation of the fragmentation of our human consciousness. And so humans, I feel, we have a task to integrate these fragments and understand also what some of these fragments represent, because it's sort of like if you start off with the cosmic trinity coming out of 0-point unified field and the founder races, then all of a sudden you got pantheons, and we see the mythology of these pantheons. You got Isis, Osiris, and Set. You got Enki and Enlil, and then you got Hades, and there's this sort of dark component within these mythologies. And then all of a sudden you have 78 cards to a tarot deck. And other decks, don't have that number, but one of the best decks does. And then you got, 12 signs in the zodiac, and all of a sudden a 13th one comes. And that 13th one, like, to me is like, the X, like of the treasure chest, of getting back to the 0 point. The number 13 is what they hijack with the Illuminati family numbers, 13 families, taking off, the elevator floor that's number 13. And I remember like there was never a 13th floor. And then a couple of years ago, I did an event and I was like, they brought back the 13th floor. And I'm like, I'm freaking out on that elevator. And everybody's like, oh my God, she's really weird. It's like, so 1-3 in the tarot is the death card, but it also is the number 4, which is the emperor, the warrior. And that, is both masculine and feminine. And so this death kind of rebirth thing is connected to the number 13. So they've used that and stolen that kind of numerology and put reversal codes in place. And basically that's why we see in the way that they roll out their dark agenda, the way it appears on a world stage level is to cause people to fear death instead of embrace it as an initiation into a great awakening. Because we can't really awaken or find true light without first facing our shadow and facing the dark. So we kind of go through an ego death. And the symbology of like even, the Christ path of resurrection, ascension, is very much a part of what we need to do to turn the tree of knowledge and the duality of the tree of knowledge of good and evil to restore it back to the tree of life, which is all about unity. And so that is what's available to us. So the deep state cabal tactics is, well, if we're going to begin to move through that gateway and people are really working their stuff and beginning this awakening, what better than to cause fear with a virus and silence everybody and begin to censor them. And I know I've just jumped all over the place and I'm not always the best communicator and it's a little late on my end, but I'm so happy to talk to you. It's so great to meet you recently. But different races and groups. So it can get very, very confusing as far as the different names and where they're located and different alliances that they've had. But, just as much as they've sort of assaulted and attacked, there are rescue missions. They're not here to save us, but they're here to remind us how to save ourselves because they are like aspects of our higher self. To me, there's no separation even from the dark beings. It just is a reflection of what we're going through in order to restore ourselves to wholeness. So we're going to face these darker entities, but if we can work that energy in a way that serves us, it can help us to return home. But in that journey, we have a responsibility as guardians to protect the innocent children and protect, the earth and its resources.
Absolutely. And that brings to mind, where we ran into each other again a couple of weeks ago here in Las Vegas and at that event. And it was an amazing weekend. And I was so happy and grateful to be there amongst so many wonderful people like-minded souls who are, here to help in any way that they can. And with that, we got to watch a premiere of a incredible movie called Sound of Freedom. And I since have, really looked into the gentleman that the movie is based on, is Tim Ballard. And this guy is an absolute incredible hero. And I'm just amazed that somebody like him even exists today, because, to do work like that is just, it takes a lot of guts to do it. And then, of course, the movie itself was just amazing and so well done. I can't wait for it to come out and for everybody to see it, because it's going to be things like that, I feel, are really going to have an impact on people. And of course, the more people are awakening, it affects the collective consciousness, the human consciousness all over the place. And as each of us rises, the overall collective consciousness is going to rise. And I feel like that's how we're going to get there. Exactly. And the more things that occur in the mainstream, that also helps, because there's a lot of people that are only paying attention to the mainstream, whether they're just too busy, raising their family, working their job, trying to pay the rent and the bills and all that, to look, or they just don't care to look. They don't have that inclination. You and I are the kind of people that we have to get to the bottom of the situation, and we have to see what's really going on in the world. Yeah. And yeah, but most people aren't that way. Well,
it's the key to healing. I mean, anytime we put somebody else in the position of telling us how we should heal, I mean, that shows how disconnected we are. I mean, and doctors are a blessing and a gift, but not when they just like actors do, sell out and say, okay, yeah, we'll do chemotherapy. Oh yeah. Or we'll be the one that gives the jab, or we'll just do this. Maybe for some, they don't know any better. And for others, it's because, they don't want to be fired. They don't want to lose money, or they, are afraid to explore the more, which I don't like the word alternative for things like herbs, but, these greater methods and modalities that actually work. Mm-hmm. So when we're faced with, a pandemic, and we see so many people just be like, oh, I'm going to wear a mask and jab myself, is very unfortunate, because it's like, where have you guys been? I mean, okay, fine, you don't get it in the school systems, but, they did a really good job at the mockery of new agey stuff, or these sort of things. And part of it is real. There's disinformation in the disclosure communities, the ascension sort of thinkers, and there's a lot of new age deception, right? So people have to stop being like, what camp should I join? Who should I give my power and energy to? What belief system should I adopt, and begin to fall back on themselves? To me, that is the ultimate revelation that comes out of the dark night of the soul journey, that you get so in touch with yourself that you don't have to join a belief system, but you can join a community based on this, established sovereignty within yourself, and be able to be a part of a greater conversation without somebody saying, I'm sorry, we're going to have to censor you because we're threatened by the fact that you aren't thinking like we want you to think. So to me, it's almost like a process of elimination. Who is allowing you to be you? Those are the people to stick with, right? Versus like, oh, no, we don't allow that in these circles. It's like a doctor saying, no, I'm sorry, we're going to reject Qigong or Chinese medicine, or, the study of herbs, or people that don't want to listen to something that wasn't in their school books. And the kind of mentality that comes from that. So my recommendation to humans is just learn to be yourself, breathe through, and buckle up, and you get strong, and strengthen your spine in the face of people that are going to want to undercut you and destroy you for being authentic and true to yourself.
Oh yeah.
And then be like, is that really a huge loss if you're going to move on from them? So many people are holding on to dear life to these people because there's so much trauma in the breakup thing, or fears of abandonment, or what, worried about what people will think, and so gracefully transition into your authenticity and sovereignty, with love. Don't attack these people back. They'll see you thrive, and they'll wonder, what you're doing. I mean, I remember going to battles with my mom, and then when I just said, you know what, this is just draining and it's not getting anywhere, and I just started to thrive and do well. And then she just turns to me, she's like, now she's curious, like, what the heck did you learn, in this reality to actually be okay? I used to let other people's projections be this burden I carried. Like, I'm carrying the weight of their ignorance in my energetic field, and it's making me ill. And I know how to heal, and I refuse to go to doctors. So, and it's a very scary step. So part of what I like to focus on in my path and mission is to help people handle that, to create events where, there's Q&As, and creating community, and where people can just cry and puke and just be a mess and just be loved and seen and heard.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge part of what I love to do. And that's, I know, like, as we get closer to the end of the show, I'll share my website, but that's what I've been doing is bringing people into that, not just being like, oh, here's my thoughts and everybody should adopt my thoughts. It's more like, okay, take it or leave it. This is what I've learned. But the greater priority is, can we help each other to just be ourselves and recover from all these abuses and traumas, and help each other to deprogram so that we can have direct connect with our intuition and with spirit and God source, and actually truly learn how to heal ourselves, instead of be like, waiting for, what the doctor says, and the diagnosis that we have to carry and, like, live with. And, that's the greater targeting. These power structures that act like they're here to help us, that literally
fear generators
are taking us further away from ourselves.
Absolutely.
So I feel like through love and compassion and being able to really hear each other and listen to each other, we won't need that as much.
And we've been attacked at every level. And if you look, and that's what people need to understand, that we've got fluoride in our water, we've got glyphosate in all of our food supply, we've got the chemtrails in the air. It just goes on and on and on. We are literally at war with these evil beings. And one of the things I think that helps a lot of people is if they can find a way to improve their diet, get out there, the common things, better diet, exercise, get out, get some sunshine, breathe the air as much as possible, and when they're not spraying the chemtrails, hopefully. And as your physical health rises, you'll find a consciousness rise as well. Exactly. And with that consciousness rise, you're going to become aware of more of the things that we're talking about. You're going to be able to see these things right in front of your face. Now, more and more people are doing that, of course. So now the cabal's got to clamp down. They've got to censor us. They've got to do everything they can. This is telling us that we're being very effective, because if we weren't being effective, they wouldn't have to resort to all these different measures to try and shut us up.
I keep thinking that they're in these meetings like, this is getting out of control.
Exactly.
They totally, like, if all these people have done this research, the resources are out there, and I'm just seeing them, like, in the boardroom, like, well, should we delete their account of this account? But if we delete their, it's sort of like,
it's like whack-a-mole now.
If you murder a whistleblower, is that more to their detriment because more attention is going to be drawn to their information? Or should we just keep him alive and target him with the COINTELPRO and smear him publicly with trolls? I can't imagine their meetings. So yeah, absolutely. Because the thing is, yes, there are nanites in food, water, the air that we breathe. But to me, these assaults and weapons are one part of it. But those assaults and these different weapons that they use wouldn't work unless a person was buying into the falsities of what's coming through the media. Like, both go hand in hand. We're very vulnerable to these assaults and attacks when we're linked into, the false narratives, or we react to every psychological operation and we believe what the news is telling us and we don't dig deeper. To me, the two go hand in hand. and makes us more vulnerable. So the greater strength that one can have in the face of these assaults through being able to shut down the false media and actually dig deeper can help neutralize and deactivate these harmful things. And that's why I like to call myself a global alchemist, because, you know, if we're dealing with heavy metals and nanites, the whole concept of alchemy is being able to turn lead into gold, but we're talking about it on a soul level, that we're able to break the mind control programs and transform even in the face of all this. And nutrition and a healthy lifestyle is going to absolutely make it easier. And without that, we're just going to keep bumping our head against the wall, because we don't realize that this is not just an awakening, it's a lifestyle shift. It's saying, I'm not going to keep this toxic job. I'm not going to stay in this destructive relationship. I'm not going to buy baloney or bullshit from the store. And
Yep. That's what makes a huge difference.
utilize like the abundance of Mother Earth, and realize that, you know, people are like, oh, you know, benevolent ETs and, you know, contact and disclosure. And yeah, that's all important. But to me, the greatest disclosure is really realizing the planetary body that we exist upon, the incredible diversity, the incredible connection we have. We are living replicas of this planetary body and consciousness and the multidimensional cosmos. When we can begin to get in touch with that, we switch on our creative power and we begin to utilize intent. We begin to be able to create magic, not ritualistic, manipulative magic, but just the power of intent, and just invoking something and being able to produce it and manifest it, you know, at will. Yep. Because one has initiated themselves into a greater integrity. You know, this is what these others are doing on a lower level. They're relying on vampirism, being parasitic, black magic, and archonic, you know, kind of forces and AI that mimic and imitate everything, but it's on just enough of a lower notch to pretty much dupe a human collective, which is nuts. And yes, a great awakening is happening, which is realizing the matrix isn't going to be helping us here. We are going to look to each other, and there are going to be leaders that are going to stand up and help us to reconnect to, you know, what really counts. And it's growing and expanding. And yeah, the false theater that we're seeing with the inauguration and, you know, this robot race, you know, they need us to be programmed, and they've used everything under the sun to make us absolutely fall for it. Oh yeah. And once a person wakes up, I feel like they have immunity.
Yeah.
And that once the chemtrails, the nanites do not work anymore. In actual fact, they can turn artificial intelligence around and make it benevolent and actually crash the negative system and the negative virus that is infected, you know, the neural networks, you know, and the things that relate to the power of the mind. And that's why mind control has been the number one tactic, because that's what directs our creative energy. Sorry, I just blah, blah.
No, you're absolutely right. And when we connect with the being that we are, that's inhabiting these physical avatars, when we fully connect and become aware of who we are, the mind control does not work anymore, because we become fully aware of it. We see it, we recognize it when it's trying to happen. So self-responsibility, self-awareness, authenticity is what we're leading to, is what everybody should be aspiring to. Because once we achieve that, nothing that they do can you know, sway us. They can't mind control us anymore. And it's a big weakness that humans have that aren't awakened yet, is that they can so easily be manipulated. But I can see a time, if enough of us wake up, that we can just totally realize who we are. And we outnumber these people by, you know, like thousands and thousands to one. It's just unbelievable. Once people become aware of our power as collectively as human beings, this is just a tiny, tiny group of you know, super evil people that are enforcing their will upon us. Yeah. So when we decide to become authentic human beings and take our power back and you know, exercise that power and say, you know what, we're not going along with your agenda. We're not going to cooperate with it. You can do whatever you want, but we're not going to fight your wars. We're not going to mask up. We're not going to take your poisons. We're just going to live our lives. the day that happens is the day that we become free. And so I know you and I both are rooting for that possibility and looking for it.
Yes.
Before we go, I want you to tell everybody, what are you doing? Are you still doing readings are with people? And tell us about your website and all the things that you're involved with besides all the shows that you do and presentations that you do.
Well, yes, I'll say that. But I just want to say it's an infection, and it has to do with duality. When the masculine and feminine, the electromagnetic energies are not flowing in harmony, and there's some kind of break between them or distortion, it becomes a breeding ground for archons and dark entities. So our greatest lesson is, okay, how do we establish or find wholeness and balance? We have to do that within ourselves and then with our loved ones, because if we don't have that with our relationships and loved ones, predators and affairs and weird stuff can happen where, people cheat and lie. So yeah, these darker forces are going to, disappear when we realize that what we're connected with and what we're, truly made of is going to cancel out these things. And the divine blueprint that is waiting for us to ignite and illuminate, once that happens and the programmings drop, we're really good to go. So everybody has their own personal soul journey and storyline and whatever, they lived out in their personal incarnations, past lives, and family members that they were born to that, they might take on a bit of their stuff. This is the greatest challenge that we absolutely have it within us to claim victory to. I mean, sometimes it feels like a big mistake, and this is just like, wow, but we're not victims. We are remembering, crucial like laws and principles connected to cosmic and natural law, connected to the true template that we all hold. And so it's a path of remembrance, and it's a huge revelation. And the mother energy and the planetary body absolutely supports us getting there. And we have life experience as the most ultimate teacher. And I just hope people love themselves and trust themselves. Well, and I love Cathy OBrien and what she said. She's like, self-love, that's a really hard mantra for me, because she survived all this MK Ultra mind control programming.
Yep.
And she was like, self-love is not very easy, but because I know love, I will live the love that I am, just be the love that you are. We don't need to, we're not necessarily going to all of a sudden have an ego that feels great. And it doesn't matter, because we want to sort of be in surrender zone and have humility, but we certainly don't want to be insecure and feel not worthy. But,
or be a
finding
doormat.
like a balance is everything. It's such an exciting journey. I didn't mean to, add that extra bit, because I don't know if you want to close, but I mean, this is a person that has survived the most horrific mind control programming. Cathy OBrien, who wrote Transformation of America.
Yep.
And her and I've, gotten back in touch recently. And, and just even seeing like the docuseries of Elizabeth Smart. I mean, there are some people that are so mind-blowing in how they embody such a frequency of love and so these two people have just really come to my mind lately.
Oh yeah.
I
I had the pleasure of meeting Mark and Cathy, back in the early 90s when their book first came out. And the whistleblower newspaper I was involved with, we actually helped them, get that out there. And
nice.
Just amazing. I miss Mark. He passed a couple of years ago, or a year and a half ago. And he was talk about a hero. That's another one too. Mark Phillips was an amazing man. And Cathy OBrien is absolutely incredible. And she's so strong and so powerful. And it just proves the power of the human spirit. It just can overwhelm and conquer anything. Yeah. And she's a living testament to that. And I have so much respect for her. And they were just amazing together as well. They talk about a power couple. That was them.
Yeah. Well, I've said this in recent interviews. I've interviewed her like 2 or 3 times in the last couple of months. We just got back in touch. I did a conference with her back in 2011. And I stopped saying, like, when we were doing interviews, one of the funny things that happened with us. And so I was like, the last interview I did with her, I'm like, I'm not going to bring it up. I don't want to be redundant, but I'm going to just say it here. It was so funny because in 2000, I think it was 11 in Philadelphia, it was a Free Your Mind conference. And she's like, one of my greatest inspirations and heroes. So I was like, oh my gosh, we're going to have a table next to each other. And both speakers at Free Your Mind conference, we gave each other a hug, and my necklace caught on her sweater, and it took us forever to unhook it. And we just instead just like hugged each other. And then when we got in touch recently, both of us have been referring to that memory that we knew in that moment. We had a huge, destiny together. And that, so yeah,
That's wonderful.
basically what I do, I don't do as many astro readings anymore. I have a Cosmic Gaia subscription. My website's cosmicgaia.org, and my Cosmic Gaia subscription, I do about 4 Zoom events a month. Sometimes I have guest hosts, and other times I just take questions and answers, and I do mini readings, which is a little bit easier for me in that setting than, having a schedule, because I'm trying to finish some books.
Right.
And then I have a Patreon with David Rodriguez. We have our Dark to Light show, but everything is on my website. And I have a few online events coming up, which is a little overwhelming. I have probably like 4. And this is how my life used to be when I was traveling. It'd be like China, Australia, and like, like, whoa, like all over the place, and just really living the principles that we're talking about. Like, we're creative in every moment. We can make or break how we're experiencing reality based on our thoughts and our perspective and our perceptions. So yeah, that was really wild. But now it's online events, and I'm trying to keep my website updated. I do all my own tech stuff because it hasn't worked out with people. I'm sure there are good people that I could work with, but got to kind of go through that dark night of the soul. Like, okay, I can trust somebody again. But no, there's some cool assistance, but yeah, I'm doing the best I can with all that. And I should put my Telegram link on my website, but yeah, my website's cosmicgaia.org. And
we'll put links to all of those in the show description so people will be able to see that. So
yeah, but I mean, every single person needs to embrace the fact that, it's like everybody's got that little X where that treasure chest exists that we just need to dig into and find and go on that adventure on a soul level, or embrace that adventure, because we're on that journey anyway, whether we like it or not. We can be mind controlled and be disconnected from it, but we need to embrace it and realize this is such an amazing adventure. And when we find that little X on the map, and the astrology is sort of part of that map that helps us to find it, it's not, about treasure and wealth. It's about that 0 point unified energy that is not just, some empty space, like zeroness. What I love is the 0 number connects with the full tarot archetype. And it's just divine innocence. It's just recognizing that, this is what's natural. This is what's real. And, when we recognize that and we find more comfort in it and reassurance in it, we break down the programming. So the problem is people have been bullied. They've been dealing with snobbery. They've been dealing with assholes, bitches. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's true though.
But it's just like, it's like literally people just want to feel loved and acceptance. And there's some people like that literally are trained to take you down.
The trolls are everywhere.
Surviving horrible breakups and divorce and abuse and assault, and it's like it's impossible to know like what to trust and who to trust. And this has been hardcore boot camp. And I don't feel like it's been deserved, but I don't believe in victimhood either. I just feel that this is the most unbelievable challenge.
It is
in the cosmos, and we're going to sit around the cosmic campfire at some point and look back and be like, can you believe
what an adventure?
Went through all that? And
what an adventure we had, right?
Yes. And but very disturbing. And so it's like the healing of the heart. And it's like, I'm not encouraging people to blindly trust anybody, but once you trust yourself enough and get to the other side of a lot of this, struggle, you'll be able to see through everyone. You'll know who is who. And it doesn't hurt to be armed, because when the predators do show up, because they might, you got to have your back and be willing to protect yourself. I mean, it's been the most unbelievable experience. I'll never get used to it.
Well, you have a divine purpose. We all do, and we need to recognize the divinity within us, that spark of God that brings these bodies life. And with that, Laura Eisenhower, thank you so much for spending your time and wisdom with us. We really appreciate you and all the work that you do. And once again, we will put links to your website and whatever other social media platforms that you're on. But thank you so much for being with us. I really appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. And thanks everybody for tuning in. And yeah, just these channels, are all about building community and also helping people transition out of their 3D job where they feel they have to compromise themselves. You know what? You guys are not alone if you're struggling with that. And that's a big deal for me, is to be that person that, can offer that comfort and network and connect people. So anyway, thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your night, Jimmy.
Okay, you too. Take care, and everybody, we'll see you next time inside the Matrix.